bunch of different streamers and YouTubers. So we're going to do our best to put all of these units in their tier. So don't forget, like, subscribe, let me know down in the comments where you guys would place your favorite and least favorite units in Mechabellum. One thing I do have to say, this hacker bot obviously does not look like this anymore, but all of the other pictures are actually what they are. I don't know why this one is not the actual hacker bot, but it is what it is. Anyway, so let's get started. So this is obviously going to be with any possibility of upgrades and everything, not just the stock unit. But we have to put Mustang up in S. It is easily the most versatile unit in the game, being able to shoot ground and air very well, being able to also stop Stormcaller anti-missiles with their upgrade as well. So it basically just can attack and stop everything in the game. It's easily the most versatile unit in the game by far. We'll just do the hacker bot now. I think hacker is B. I think it can be useful. Definitely have to place it right and also be doing enough damage to whatever unit you're attacking or trying to hack into. That way the health goes down and the hack goes up a little bit faster. But other than that, the hacker is basically one shot by most things. It doesn't have a whole lot of health. It's very much a utility unit. Crawlers I have to put in B. I think they're overall just too easily dealt with. I think there are very few units that can get overwhelmed by crawlers. They're much more of just a meat shield type units. Now don't get me wrong, they're very good, they're very worth their value, but again, it's very much so you can overwhelm certain units, and those certain units are very few and far between, to where it's not always the best thing. Arclight I'm gonna put in A. I think it's a very solid early game tank, especially. I think it's good against, fangs, crawlers, those types of smaller health groups. You can also add the anti-air upgrade as well, so that's very nice. I will say, again, it's definitely much more of an early game tank. The health is not always there or the best. Now, you can upgrade it with the armor pack, and that definitely holds it down, especially the more levels and upgrades that you get for it. But I think it's overall a very solid unit, very much worth the value no matter what you're spending. Nothing too bad to say about it. I just don't think that it gets up into the S tier. Excuse me, sorry. Let's see, what do we want to do next? I think sledgehammers, honestly, to me, are B. I think they are much like the Stormcallers here. They're very much more situational. Now, I think sledgehammers are better than Stormcallers because they can do much more guaranteed damage. Stormcallers are just way too inconsistent. If you're not fighting teams that are full of fangs or crawlers or even other sledgehammers or stormcallers where they're very stationary, or steel balls as well, where they're very stationary, where you can shoot all of your rockets and do the damage to those units, then stormcallers are just way too inconsistent, and if anybody gets close enough to them, they cannot attack at all, and especially not the units that are close to them. So these are one of the units that, crawlers definitely super excel at, being able to essentially move faster than the missiles, as well as once they get close enough, you can't do anything about it. So Stormcallers are way too inconsistent for me to put even above B. I kind of want to put them in C, but they do have, against certain builds, they do succeed, but again, the consistency is not there. Melting Point, I honestly have to put Melting Point in C. I think having such a giant health pool for something that can attack anything, whether it's ground or air, is very nice. I think a lot of the upgrades are very good as well. I don't really have anything bad to say about Melting Point other than it's single target unless you get the upgrade where it can shoot 5 beams, but then it does less damage, so you kind of have to pick and choose, but yeah, I think Melting Point overall is a super strong, just anti-unit in general, being able to attack ground and air. I think its only real weakness is the fact that it can only shoot at one target at one time, so it can get overwhelmed kind of at some points if you have enough. But again, if you have the 5 beams, then that becomes not so much of a problem. Um, Rhino, I also have to put up an S tier. I think he is the epitome of the best tank in the game. You get some heavy upgrades on him to get his HP regenerating and armor. I think he is one of the most devastating tanks in the game, especially if he can do well enough to keep getting leveled up upgrades. He can easily succeed and take out pretty much anything in the game pretty easily, whether it's other big health units or just, you know, crowds like fangs or crawlers or other stuff like that. So yeah, honestly nothing bad to say about Rhino except that not everything in the game can shoot air units, so that's his only downside, that air units can fuck him up a little bit, but that's not really anything to worry about overall. Steel balls, oh, steel balls are hard. I think I also have to put them in B. I think I don't know, they just don't really give that oomph. They can't shoot air, and just having so few of them in a group, um, and I don't feel like they do an insane amount of damage either. I think they're much more uh, a group of kind of small tanks that do decent damage, but overall they're just not. They're just better choices. We'll just go with that. I think in ways they can be put into A, but overall there's just better choices than steel balls 90% of the time. Much like I will do overlords here in A, I think they are pretty devastating, as well as the upgrades that you can get for them. I think having a high health air unit that can do very good damage, and you can move them around if you get the upgrade as well. I think it's a very solid choice almost always. And because they're not like wasps or phoenix, they have a lot more health, so they can hopefully kill whatever is shooting them from the sky, or just outlive it and have something else kill it. So we will do wasps here in B. I think of the 3 flying units, they're the worst, mostly just because they're lower health and attack and everything compared to Overlord and Phoenix here. They can be useful. Obviously, there are a lot of units in the game that cannot attack air, so the 3 air units are always possibly good viable choices depending on what your enemy or enemies have, or what they have built. But this one is definitely the fastest speed, and technically the fastest attack, but just not as much attack. So I will put Phoenix up here at A. I think they are probably the most viable air unit, even kind of more so than Overlord, just because they are much more damaging, and in my opinion they have better upgrades as well. Now there is only 2 of them, so if you're facing against a marksman or even a melting point or something else, they can get taken down decently fast if you don't have the shield upgrade on them, but overall they are a very, very solid unit choice. I might honestly even want to put them in S, just because they can definitely be, I would say, arguably the most devastating aerial unit in the game. Fangs I'm going to put in B as well. I think they're arguably the best group of ground units, because you can give them some shields and let them definitely stay alive a little bit faster, but they definitely don't have a whole lot of health. They can definitely be dealt with relatively easily, but they can shoot aerial units. So if you don't have something that can, or no upgrades for somebody that can, then Fangs are a good middle ground for that. They're not going to do fantastic. They don't do a whole lot of damage, and they don't have a lot of health, but they can get the job done, and if you put some shields on them, they're a little bit more tanky against everything. Vulcan, I'm going to put an A. I think they're just good against every single type of crowd, and they definitely have a good amount of health to where they can at least compete against something like Rhino, Arclight, and kind of some of the other big units like Melting Point and stuff. I think they are decent. They're definitely not S tier. And I also don't, their upgrades aren't the greatest either. I think they're just a solid anti-unit, anti-crowding destroyer, basically. And they do have a good amount of health, but honestly the health can be taken out pretty easily because they don't really have anything defensive like Rhino or Melting Point or anything to kind of sustain them. So watch out there. Marksman, I gotta put in B. I wish that I would like him more. I think if any unit needs a buff, it's probably the Marksman. I think the upgrades honestly just aren't that great. You're either, you know, shooting faster but doing less damage, or you're doing more damage but shooting super slow. He can only do 1 shot at a time. He's very slow at shooting no matter what overall, and really he's only good at targeting aerial units because he can shoot aerial units, which is great, or he's good at targeting higher health units because he does a lot of damage. But if he's definitely one of the easiest units in the game to overwhelm pretty much with anything, because he can't attack very fast, and he can only shoot 1 target at a time. So if you have a group of crawlers, he's only killing 1 crawler per shot. So he's very easy to overwhelm with crawlers, fangs, mustangs, even wasps, honestly. A little less with them because they don't do a whole lot of damage, but still he can, depending on the levels of him and the Phoenix, he can overall one-shot them pretty nicely. He does have viability, but his upgrades are shit, and if he's not shooting aerial units or high health ground targets, then he overall isn't doing a very good job. And it's hard to place him to be able to do those things as well. So again, I think if anybody in the game needs a buff, it's probably him. Not a big one. I think he just needs some upgrade changes maybe, or a little bit of something to help him out. Fortress I'll give to A. So to me, Fortress is essentially a marksman that we just talked about, but more damage, more health, but can't shoot aerials. So you definitely have to pick and choose, but I do think the upgrades for Fortress are a whole lot better, has more health, much more devastating against higher health targets because he does a lot of damage. I believe he does do some splash damage and whatnot to be able to, yeah, he does do splash damage. I think he's pretty decent. I just think that he's not used a lot in comparison to a lot of the other units. But overall, very solid. Really nothing bad to say about him. But